is what I'm doing good enough? Is it important enough? Is it relevant enough? And then my interpretation of the answer is that sometimes the question is not, is it good enough? The question is there something coming from within me that wants to be shared? And if I don't share it, then maybe no one will share this.
The more we dive deeply into the solutions that technology promises, in this a difficult time, the more we realize that the human element is often critically lacking. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Antonio Patterson, host and producer of the show. The show is self-sponsored and independent, and takes my usual relaxed, accessible, human approach to your learning experience. Come out, just helping people. The calling is definitely
Yeah.
of the heart, and it is the fulfillment that you get from it. So there's also that aspect that drives your career.
Very much in my teaching.
This episode today is dedicated to all the teachers, trainers, and their students who, in spite of all the adversities we're facing today, have risen to the challenge to embrace that which in truth we've always had. And there was this moment, I still have the vision of you coming down the stairs, and you smiled, you seemed nice. I was, of course, distracted by my whiskey straight. Yes, and it was just one of those moments that I won't forget. I mean, Saeed is still, I mean, he was also on the show. He was one of the first who had
Yes.
faith in it. I want to have him on again because what he was saying there at the time, I was a young podcaster. I am so happy to present the guest for today's show, an old friend of mine and professor of mathematics, Ms. Rebecca Waldecker. Today we approach the question, how to survive as a female mathematician in a male-dominated field. We also look at what I call nuanced or creeping subversiveness of discriminatory behavior and the tangible effects that this can systemically have on your career. Where exactly does it all come from? Is it all true? Is it better to warn or sensitize a person to this, or should we better preserve their innocence? Okay, so Rebecca, finally I have you on the show, and it is so wonderful to have you here today. I'm feeling great. You're looking fantastic as well, if I might say so myself,
Thank you
on
so much.
camera.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Also, for me, it is definitely a wonderful pleasure. Not only because you are well, I'm going to say an old friend.
Yeah, we have known each other for a while now.
We did meet on let's say, on the separate cover. We won't get into that right now because today, not yet, we won't get into that yet. However, I would like to just introduce you quickly to the listeners. Rebecca, you are a professor of mathematics,
Yes.
and I I have the greatest respect for that. I'm going to admit to you that I'm a little bit, as in German we say, geflasht from that. I am a little bit geflasht because, I have the greatest respect for mathematics, and I have also a few questions prepared for you in terms of how you survive that, how you live that reality in what I think is a male-dominated field.
Yes, it still is. Yes, that's true. And where should I start? When I was a student, I did not think in these categories. So
Hmm.
I did not think about what I wanted to do later. I didn't have any particular job in mind. I was just fascinated by several subjects. Mathematics was one of them. And well, actually, it only took one lecture to convince me that I am very, very happy with mathematics and that I enjoy learning about it. As a student, I didn't pay attention to issues like how many female students do we have, how many male students. It didn't even occur to me, and I never felt any discrimination or anything. Only much later I became aware of the fact that actually all my senior teachers were male. All the professors were male. Most of my student teachers were male. And over time, more female student teachers occurred. I was one of them. But I only really realized this much later when I met female math professors for the first time. So as a student, I didn't really pay attention. Only much later, I became aware of that. And now, yes, I think it's still very male dominated. And sometimes I am in situations where, how can I say that? It's the communication, it's dynamics in the room, in a group. Sometimes I feel that this is still very, very male dominated. Maybe it's just a particular kind of male behavior being somehow stuck in their ways, in their opinions, in the way they communicate. I just feel more comfortable in mixed teams. That's just the way
Hmm.
it is.
Understood. Understood. Now, you said something there quite interesting because, well, actually, you did say when you met other female professors.
Hmm.
And of course, I would ask you why, yeah, why did that happen when you met other female professors, first of all, and also examples of the behaviors that made you feel
Oh,
um,
hmm,
strange from the men. Yeah.
hmm, okay. So I think I got in touch with that the first time when I left Kiel. So in Kiel, I did my undergrad degrees and also my PhD. And during my PhD, I went to, oh no, wait, I went to Paris as an undergrad, and there I met a female postdoc. That was my first experience of a slightly more advanced female mathematician. But
Hmm.
then later I went to Birmingham in the UK, and this was my first contact with female math professors. And it was the first time that people talked to me about women in mathematics and how sometimes they are treated differently than men. And before it never occurred to me. But then suddenly I started thinking about just little incidents where I thought, oh, yes, actually, this kind of behavior that you mentioned to me, I have seen this happen. I just didn't realize it before. So, for
Hmm.
example, um, the kind of administrative duties that male and female staff members got tended to be different. And some female colleagues told me that they felt that somehow there was some stereotyping going on when it came to who should do what kind of job. So it was just assumed that as a female staff member, you are more sensitive and therefore you could be something like a welfare tutor or you could look after first year students. So
Hmm.
clearly there are some stereotypes. And then when I started being more aware of this, I noticed this too. And I still do to this day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Understood, understood. So, the impulse that you got from your female colleagues then was more of a kind of a protective impulse. They wanted to
Mhm.
warn you of what you would put up with, or
Yes, and there were also a few younger male colleagues who also did this. So they were sensitive towards this issue. And they basically, from them, I got advice along the lines of um, you're a strong mathematician, and if you consider a career in academia, then just please be aware that there are some bits, some areas where female mathematicians or female staff members are treated slightly differently, and there are some traps. And if you fall into this trap, then you have too little time for research, and then you will not advance the way you maybe want to advance. So it was little warnings, and um, sometimes people didn't go into details, but I felt as if they had personal experiences, or maybe they knew people with personal bad experiences, and they just didn't want to give too much information away, and they didn't want to scare me, but they wanted me to be aware, which in hindsight was very good. I got very, very good advice then.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I understand. That is sad because I mean, I will not try to suggest that the kind of discrimination that I also feel because of who I am
Hmm.
is the same as that, but I can relate to that kind of thing, and I do sympathize. I do sympathize. The good thing though is that you had people who valued your contribution enough to warn you of these things, and well, look at who you are now, where you are now. So obviously you made it through.
Yes, and now I'm in a position where sometimes people ask me for advice, and then I'm struggling. So maybe you can relate to this as well. Where is it appropriate to give some words of warning, and where should one maybe not warn people because maybe it's better to leave them in a state of innocence? I'm not sure. What
Hmm.
do you think?
I am not quite sure because that's a very good question. Because if you there is some truth to the fact that if you acknowledge something as being a problem, you give it power, you give it life. So the
Exactly.
question is always, do you ignore it, or do you give the warning of a thing without saying what the thing is? That could be an approach. For example,
Hmm.
you say to someone, make sure that you are professional, and when you're speaking to your professional peers, keep it professional.
Hmm.
That could be advice that could help to keep you out of many traps that might happen along, in your career, without specifically saying what these traps are. So that could be one approach. But
Yes.
I, that's what I think. You could do it
What I
like
like about
that.
this is that you open the door to addressing this without further stereotyping. So, for example, let me see, if I see a very talented female student and she is one of my student helpers, for example, she works with me in teaching, and if I have the feeling that she is very helpful, very generous with her time, and people might take advantage of that, then I wouldn't go there and say, oh, you're a woman, so therefore people will try and take advantage of your empathy and generosity. No, I could just go there and say, you are a very generous person. You are very generous with your time. And I have seen it happen to people that other people exploit that and take advantage of it. So I just want to give you a kind word of warning. Just be aware of this and of this danger. Or maybe I could even say, this actually has happened to me because I also enjoy being generous with my time and I enjoy being helpful, but some people just exploit that and they don't accept boundaries. And so if I choose to have a conversation in that way, then maybe I can address this without stereotyping and without making the issue bigger than it actually is.
Yes, 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 yes. That's a perfect example. We are definitely in agreement here. You speak to the issue without speaking to it, so to speak.
Yes, without
That is
making
probably
the
the best way.
yeah, because I don't want to um what's the English word? In German, I would say, ich möchte das nicht betonieren. I don't want to make
Hmm.
the prejudice even stronger. I don't want to make it,
Yes,
I don't want to give it even more power than it already has.
yes, 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 yes. Yes, we're definitely in agreement there. As a matter of fact, I never really thought about it until you just asked me, and I think that goes to show that there are definitely different natures of that kind of treatment from people who are in certain positions of whether it be entitlement or for want of a better word, privilege, that happens to different minorities of different kinds, and the
Hmm.
way to deal with these problems are quite similar. You don't
Hmm.
have to speak to it, because as sometimes you speak to it and you might be immediately put into a corner of being some kind of paranoid or something like that.
Yes,
Good advice.
I also had some conversations with students who experienced something that they felt might have been discrimination. And then when we talked about this and deconstructed it,
Hmm.
and I told them one or two stories that, like from me, so I shared some of my experiences, um, then they considered this to be an eye opener. And sometimes their first feeling about this was very mixed. It was a bit like, oh my God, now I see lots of things very differently, and I'm not sure
Hmm.
I can unsee them
Hmm.
again. So it can also be a burden. After a while, you
Yes.
get used to it and you find your way to manage the situation. But sometimes I had feedback of this kind. It was a bit like, oh, actually, my life was easier before when I didn't notice all these little things, but now I do,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes my
Mm-hmm.
life
Mm-hmm.
harder.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. We have to be careful, because sometimes we also impose our own prejudices sometimes on people. Also,
Yes,
yeah, yeah. I have to.
yes, I
I
agree.
can't. Yes, yes, yes. I can't walk around with always flying a flag of whatever because I can impose that on people, and if they look for certain things, sometimes they will find it.
Yes, it's also easy to become sort of oversensitive, and then everything will fall into this category, even if people mean something completely different. And by that, I mean that everything they experience, all the behaviors, all the comments from other people are always viewed as, oh, now I'm being discriminated against again.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes this really wasn't the case, but they had some kind of filter, and everything came through this filter, and they became oversensitive. That's the best word I have. So in some situations they were right, and it was correct to address this and to enter the discussion, but sometimes it was just a misunderstanding, and they were not able to see that as a misunderstanding. So this is another danger.
In this part of our conversation, we talk about meeting a Nobel Prize recipient. We also explore imaginings of parallel universes. I want to do proper justice to the richness and authenticity of a natural, organically emerging conversation. I want to do proper justice to Rebecca, my esteemed guest for the show today, and you will notice that I have not chopped it or squeezed it into short form. The beautiful thing about having an independent show is that you're not under any time pressure. You're not forced to squeeze in all sorts of advertising or sound bites from anyone. You have the space to enjoy authenticity. And I'm going to invite you today to enjoy that freedom too. What am I actually saying? That is all in way of saying what? That was my warning that this show is gonna be a long one. You will notice that I took the liberty to insert some kind of interlude for different sections that will give you an idea of where we are and where we're going. This will help you to just maintain track. And, sometimes if you want to recap, you can just listen to the summary again. Right now, I'm going to invite you again, as I said, just download it. You can pause it for one day and listen again the other day. And the other thing that I'm going to invite you to do categorically, there was a time when I would be hot for reviews and hot for feedback and inviting people to write things. Now, I don't need any ratings. Yes, you don't have to worry about going and giving me stars. You don't have to worry about writing me love letters or anything like that. What I want you to do, if you find the show informative, if you have learned something, if you found the conversation entertaining, or if there was anything at all you like about the show, you can share it with a friend. That is what I want you to do. You can always go to www.englishcoachpodcast.com, or you can look in the show notes to see Rebecca's link to see what she's doing. She's a podcaster just like me. She's not just a professor of mathematics, okay? So if you're interested and if you want to share what you heard today, feel free to share it with a friend. That is exactly what would make us happy. So again, I hope you recognize the value that both of us are trying to share with you today, and do enjoy the show. Yes, yes, yes. So that's definitely a good approach. Oh my goodness, on the spur of a moment. All right, you know what? I'm gonna still though ask you something that is coming back to one of the first, well, the first question I asked. The idea that the field is male dominated. Funnily, the only two mathematicians that come to mind that I know professional are women.
Ah,
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. So, also in terms of being dominated, I don't know, maybe because I never studied, that wasn't my major in university anywhere. quite coincidentally, the two I know, there is one called Sibylle. Yeah, maybe
Hmm.
even know her, Sibylle Bergsee. And there were a few that I met, by the way, in a tango class. I think I mentioned that, but I didn't really get to know any of them. And you're now the second, actually.
Yes,
So
I
I don't know any
think
male
so.
mathematicians.
If I look around and if I look at people at the professor level at universities, then this is clearly very male dominated. If I look further down, for example, at PhD students and also students, then it's very much 50-50 already or close to it. I'm not sure about schools and school teachers that have math as a subject, but my guess would be that there is not a very big difference anymore. Maybe this used to be different 20 or 30
Hmm.
years ago.
Hmm.
um, Mathematicians are not very visible in society. It's a bit different from subjects like physics or chemistry, where you have the Nobel Prize, for example. Just now, recently, there were two women and they received a shared Nobel Prize for chemistry. I was thrilled when I saw that because I met one of these women when
Wow.
a few years ago. Yes, I was at an event where Emmanuelle Charpentier got another sign of appreciation for her scientific work. And I was so happy when I saw that now she got the biggest prize, the biggest sign of appreciation from the scientific community that you can possibly get. So the attention of the public, I think, is more on these subjects. So there it's more noticeable if you just see fewer men or fewer women.
Hmm.
Whereas in mathematics, there is nothing, there is no Nobel Prize. There are other prizes, but they don't, at least to my feeling, they don't enter the public conscience so much.
Hmm. Understand. That's kind of like a scary thought, you know. The world is filled with mathematicians, but you never see them.
Yes,
Scares
we
me
are
a
all
little bit.
sitting in our offices working away quietly.
Yes, just that kind of scares me. Oh my God. Oh my God.
No, we are not scary. Some of us are a bit weird, but we are not scary.
Weird. Yeah, interesting, I would say. Interesting. All right, tell you what. I'm gonna ask you another question, which is very nice, as I think this interests me personally. Now, the mathematician in you, you mentioned the fact that since childhood, you were interested in math. Was there any one particular instance? Did you have like one teacher who particularly inspired you, or maybe there was something that you used to do as a child that kind of pushed you in that way? Yes, or was it always this way? You know, were you always this way from a baby, or was it at a point in time when you changed?
Mm, I have to think about this for a bit because, as far as I remember, my interests were always quite widely spread. I was always very interested in music. I was also interested in biology in the sense that as a kid I would crawl through grass and, you know, low trees and I would collect animals and plants and find out what they were. And so in a
Yeah,
parallel universe, I'm probably one of these people who crawl through the jungle and find new bugs. Mm.
yeah.
So there were always, and also language. I've always been fascinated with language. Since childhood I have been reading tons of books. Mathematics was just one of these subjects that um, sort of, what's the word? They tickled my intellect in a different way. They were challenging. So in school, a lot of the stuff that was going on was, well, not boring, but not very challenging. Mathematics was a bit different. And I remember one teacher who had a very academic way of introducing new subjects, and I liked that. Later, when I left school, I didn't really have a clear preference. There were lots of subjects that I found interesting, but when I was in my first math lecture, there was no question that this is where I'm going to stay. So I
Hmm.
decided for mathematics because I knew some people who did it and it sounded very interesting. And I liked maths in school and I liked the challenge. Somehow it felt like a subject that would really challenge me, challenge my intellect.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really know what to expect from mathematics at the university. But then, when I was in the first lecture and the professor started introducing all this abstract stuff, I sat there and I just thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's logical. That's I had the sense of structure, and everything just felt right, as if I belonged there.
Oh my goodness. I had visions of you seeing the stars for the first time or something like that. Yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
maybe not
Nice.
quite like that, but I definitely felt a sense of belonging there. It felt right to be there, to learn this stuff, to try and really get into it and really understand all the little details. And as most students, I made a lot of mistakes and it was a tough learning experience, but I really enjoyed the struggle. It
Mm-hmm.
was just a huge difference to school where everything was really easy and I didn't have to work much. But now
Mm-hmm.
I had to work and I enjoyed that so much.
Finally a
So
challenge.
much. Yes.
Yes. I get the feeling that even though you were very driven and interested as a child in things like biology, and we're coming back to that, it was first at university level where you were really activated and motivated by mathematics.
Yes. So before it was just one of several subjects that I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being so shortly before I finished school, I was seriously considering becoming a professional musician,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a singer or a composer or something like that.
You
But
sing?
then, yeah, I sing and I also compose music. Um,
Really?
yeah, I do. So I was seriously thinking about that. But then I had the feeling that I wasn't good enough to be a professional singer and to actually earn a living with that. And then I was torn between things like mathematics, philosophy, molecular biology, or maybe something between biology and chemistry. I also really like chemistry. I also like literature, so that was also on the list. But
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, somehow I ended up in maths and I never regretted it. On the other hand, I don't consider it a calling in the sense of, oh, I was always meant to be a mathematician, because I'm sure I'm not. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that I'm sure that it could have been completely differently, and I would have sat in a chemistry lecture with the exact same sense of, oh, this is beautiful, this makes sense, and I like this so much, and I want to be a chemist. I just think that my interests are broad and I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I would have been just as happy as a chemist. And I'm sure I
Wow.
would have been just as happy as a singer. I'm just not talented enough. So
Oh,
that's
well,
something
yeah.
for parallel universe, Rebecca.
I would probably like to hear some of the music you've composed. As a matter of fact, I'm very much interested. The episode that I'm publishing, next actually has a little, they call it a sound logo, which is just like 2.5 seconds, some
Ah,
kind of signature sound. And it's very complicated. I've had it for a while. I'm just going to
hmm,
use it because I like it. Yes,
yeah.
but hopefully I can add to it a little bit later. 2 seconds, 2.5,
Two
right?
and a half seconds.
2.5 seconds. It's just a sound. It's just a sound that will come
Yes.
between breaks, and I will use
I
it.
see. Yeah.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
I love this. And I'm sure, well, I have this theory that um, it doesn't matter that I cannot live all my interests in this
Hmm.
one life. That's fine, because I think there are lots of parallel universes where Rebecca does slightly different things. So in one of them, she's definitely a professional singer. I can see myself as an opera singer as well as a heavy metal singer, definitely. And there's also one universe where I am a kindergarten teacher or maybe a costume designer. So there's so many other things I can see myself doing, and it's just parallel Rebecca, and she is happily doing that. Yeah.
Hmm. 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 Very interesting indeed.
What
I'm
does
very
parallel
interested to
Ian
find
do?
out. Parallel Ian. There are two characters on my. Oh, was that a question for me?
Yeah. I mean,
For this.
if you think about what you might do in a parallel universe, what are the one or two first things that come to mind?
That's a very good question. And I'm not
That's
quite
a
sure
hard
if I'm.
question, maybe.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's a hard question. I'm not quite sure I'm prepared to answer that. But I'm gonna try because as a you're disclosing, and I honestly think that the first thing that I could think of as a child, I was also very much interested in biology, plants and animals. I know
Ah.
a lot about plants and animals, a lot. Yes, I could almost challenge you now to any kind of trivia about plants or animals, and I'm almost sure that I could
Wow,
answer the question. I
definitely. But there
Yes,
you
I
go. There's a
could.
parallel universe where you and I are crawling through the jungle finding new bugs or new, I don't know, plants or something like that. Definitely.
Yes, yes, I could. I definitely have had an appreciation for that. It was a big part of my life as a child. I was very interested in documentaries, like at 10, 11, or, well, not 10 or
Hmm.
11, younger, actually. I was very
Hmm.
much interested in biology, books on snakes and all sorts of
Oh, yes,
things.
snakes. Oh,
Mm-hmm,
yes, snakes and snails and
mm-hmm,
um, all kinds of butterflies and bees and,
mm-hmm.
this stuff. And for some reason, fish, although I never
Fish as well.
really looked for fish, but in books I
Mhm.
found them interesting. And birds,
Everything,
birds. And whatever was
everything.
singing in our garden, I
Mm-hmm.
I would go and find books and try to find out exactly what it is and why it sings this way. And oh, yeah. And I'm still fascinated by that. But I forgot a lot. As a child, I was much better at knowing all this stuff.
I haven't forgotten anything. But
Oh, I
the
envy
idea,
you.
the idea though of these selves that we carry around and accepting all of them is also something that I'm toying with. I sometimes toy with the idea of having two characters on my show. One of them is called Sibylle von Spitzen. She's a certain way. And then there's another person called Flavio Pragmatico. He's also a certain way. And there's also a fly called Fred. All
Mhm.
these three people help me on the show. And they are
Yeah.
probably, well, yeah, they're just interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. And so, it's okay to carry around these other selves. It doesn't mean that you are either lying to yourself or being disingenuous. Yes, all
Yes,
of
I
these
agree. Yeah, I think it's
personalities
a
can live.
it's a playful way to integrate different parts of your personality. And before I thought about it this way, I used to be just sad and depressed because I thought,
Hmm.
oh, what would have happened if I had become an opera singer? Or what would have
Hmm.
happened if I had had my own heavy metal
Hmm.
band? Or I don't know. But it doesn't have to make me sad. I can
Hmm.
just embrace this part of myself in this life and maybe
Hmm.
integrate some of this so I can write silly math songs and sing them to my
Hmm.
students
Hmm.
and make them laugh. And so I can integrate this musical side into my life a little bit. And I can just imagine that there's another version of me living
Hmm.
this fully. And who knows,
Yes.
maybe she has a strange sense for numbers and she wonders why.
Well, so there's math and music. I can imagine a very close connection. Yes,
Mhm.
probably. I don't know. Probably music is the soul of mathematics. Who knows?
Who knows? I have lots of colleagues who are very, very musical. They play instruments on a very high level, some of them. It's
Hmm.
impressive. Yes.
Yes, of course, of course. I would be interested to know, and I'm sure also some of the listeners would be interested to know if you're willing to share something of your art in that direction. I would love to hear your singing and your heavy metal renditions. I don't know what you do in that direction, but yeah, I'd love to. If you have a link or something, you just tell it to me and I shall share.
Oh, I have to think about whether there is something I'm prepared to share. I don't know.
Well, it's okay. It's okay. I won't put you. You don't have to decide now, but if there is, then I
Mhm.
just add it in the show notes, and that would be fantastic because I have such a
Thank you.
thing for artists. Yes, I mean, well, I don't want to get too deeply into my search for art. Yes, but I like the idea of bringing different art forms together
Hmm.
and meeting the people behind these art forms and hearing the stories. So very interested indeed. Very
Thank
interested.
you. Thank you.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. So I am now gonna go back, and if you have no questions for me, I would like to move on
I think I asked them, the ones I had so far. Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, fine. There's this one question that always comes up. Yes, when I meet gifted people, there's always a question of talent versus hard work versus calling versus simple ego. There are many
Mm-hmm.
people I know who do degrees and they just do it for glory. Yes? Many people I know who do
Yes.
that, which is fine. It's fine. If you can pay for it and you have the time and so on, so it's okay if you want to do it for glory. But I mean, your preoccupation, your career in math, right? How does this mix come together? Talent, hard work, calling, and ego.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I okay. I have a talent for logical thinking and for structures, and I did not know this before I met people who have less of this talent.
I really hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. In this part of the conversation, we look at negotiating talent, hard work, calling, and ego. We look at the possible benefits of, as Rebecca put it, running against the same wall several times, a kind of stubbornness. We even go further into exploring the mathematician's hypothesis that maybe the heart is more important than the brain. I've never really been one to try to trick people into subscribing or into signing up for something with flashing lights and bells and whistles. But if you like what you hear, feel free to simply subscribe with your favorite podcast app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can just listen. You can sign up at www.trainingtree.de/podcast or englishcoachpodcast.com. For the more personal, exclusive, insider experience, you can also sign up to join my private listeners group. I really hope that you enjoy the show today, and do feel free to share it with a friend.
That's a tough one in several ways. Okay, let's talk about talent first. I am talented in terms of logical thinking, thinking in structures, or mathematical thinking, and but I know that's actually funny. I know that I'm actually more gifted when it comes to things like language,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is weird. So I don't know what this means, but um, I didn't notice that mathematical thinking is easier when you have some kind of talent until I went to university, because I just noticed that some things were easier for me than for others because I already have a way of structured thinking and a sense for
Uh-huh.
logic and so on. And not everyone has this or has the same amount.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think it's aptitude
So
is the
as a
word.
teacher,
Mm-hmm.
say it again.
I think it's aptitude, but I'll be careful with
Aptitude.
aptitude. Yes,
Thank you.
I think so.
As a teacher, as a teacher, this is very important because I cannot assume that all my students have the same talent for logical thinking. I have to assume that I have to get into a conversation with them about that before I use it naturally in my teaching. So this was important for me as a process to get to know myself better, but it's also very important for me as a teacher. So yes, I have this talent and I enjoy mathematical thinking a lot. I like the beauty of it, the structure. I enjoy the beauty of an elegant argument. I enjoy if there is a surprising turn in a proof. I really love this. So it's talent together with motivation, yes. But I also have a talent for other things. So talent alone was not what made me go deeper into mathematics. There is a lot of hard work involved, yes, a lot of patience and perseverance. And as a mathematician, I think I need a lot of tolerance for frustration. I need to be able and willing to run against the same wall several times. I need to be able and willing to try and solve a problem and to not solve it in 100 different ways
Mm-hmm.
and then to have the right idea that gets me to the end. So it has something to do with character and constitution a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
To keep going when you think that you have no chance and you are too stupid to do it, but stubbornness is bigger, and so you keep going. I am very stubborn. Sometimes this helps.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
As a kid. Oh, my parents could tell you stories.
Okay.
Um, Calling is difficult
Mm-hmm.
because, oh, this is really hard. For a while, I thought that my intellectual capacities somehow give rise to a calling that I should do something with that. So it's a bit like, oh, if I'm smart, then I have to do something where I can use the fact that I'm smart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure that's true. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm 41 now, and a few years ago I started to seriously doubt that hypothesis because I am definitely more than my brains, and maybe my heart is more important. Maybe it's more important to do something where I can, well, yes, use my brain, but also use things like empathy and communication and reaching out to people and help
Mm-hmm.
them along their way.
That's it
Maybe
right
that's
there.
um so I think I redefined what calling might mean for me. And then there's ego,
Hmm.
and ego is a never-ending story, in particular because it comes at you from so many different angles that it's really difficult to keep track.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a student and the professor singles you out because you always ask really intelligent questions. And your ego goes, oh, you're the best student there ever was. No, of course you're not. And then in the next exam, you make a really stupid mistake, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I made my share of stupid mistakes, and I still do. Or maybe, I don't know, you do a PhD, and then everyone tells you, oh, that's so great, a PhD in mathematics, you must be so clever. Yes, but I'm also stupid at the same time. So
Is that so wonderful? I think that's
yeah,
great.
one of the one of the how can I say this? When people ask me what I do and when I tell them that I'm a mathematician, then the main reactions I get are something like, "Oh, you must be very smart," or "Oh, I always hated mathematics," or maybe, "Oh, I'm scared of mathematics," or "Oh, I had the worst math teacher in the world." Something along these lines. So it seems as if there is something connected with the subject, mathematics, and I think it's not the only one, but there is some connection, some emotional connection. There are some stereotypes connected to it, and ego can feed off this,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Cool.
So, yes, sometimes there are situations where I can really hear my ego talking to me,
Me too.
and it's a never-ending story to, uh, yeah, to just talk back and
Mm-hmm.
say, "What do you want?"
All right. Well, Rebecca, you answered that really well. I don't get the feeling that you attempted to give me really an answer because if you think you can do that, then I don't know if I would consider you to be so smart anymore. I think you can just converse with these ideas exactly the way you did. You are aware of these different drives that will affect your action logic depending on where you are, who you're talking to. You are aware of them to the point where you can, it's called disassociation. You can step outside of yourself, for example, and watch your ego, which is a very
Hmm.
important thing. So, I might ask you these questions. I just want to see how you negotiate with these drives. Have you accepted these human drives, and you how you come to terms with them? Yes, do you try to kill
Hmm.
them off, or you try to balance them out? And that's exactly the kind of, I'm not going to say answer, but response that I find interesting. Yeah, I hope the
Ah,
listeners find that
okay.
interesting as well. But
Yes.
I'm gonna move on here because from what you said, right? And I'm gonna throw these at you again because I think you can handle it.
Yeah,
The the
please do, please
music.
do.
I want to
In
ask you.
particular, because in particular, sorry for interrupting, but I think both of us know how ego comes at you in different ways depending on what your work is at the moment. So,
Mm-hmm.
as a mathematician, ego talks to me in a different way than as an artist, a musician,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe you can relate to this. Depending on what you do, ego talks to you in different ways.
I am in perfect agreement with you. I also don't think ego is always a bad thing. It's the reason why I
No, it's
shave
not.
and cut my hair and use deodorant, to be honest. Yes, if it wasn't for my ego, I wouldn't do these things.
Oh, but sorry. For me, ego is the exaggeration
Mm-hmm.
of what you just mentioned. So I think the other aspect of it would be just something like self-consciousness or
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes, of course. That was like an exaggeration from me,
self-awareness.
actually. Yes, yes, yes.
So
But
ego, I don't know. Maybe ego for me has a slightly different connotation. I'm not
could
sure.
be, could be. All right. That was a little extreme. It's not just ego that makes me cut my hair and shave and use deodorant. Yes. But I do not totally reject it because it definitely does help us sometimes. Right?
Hmm.
It
Yes.
is the thing that will say to you, well, I will not put up with this kind of behavior from a professional colleague, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes,
Hmm.
I mean, you could just resign and say, well, one day this person will recognize their bad deeds, and you just say, okay, fine, it's not really that important. Or you could say, no, I will not stand for this. Right?
Hmm.
There's a part of that is also somehow, in some parts, driven also by the ego, I think, which is not necessarily unhealthy.
Yes. Okay, so you're trying to extract the useful message that the ego also sends.
Of
Okay.
course, of
Yes, I
course,
get
it's not
that.
it's not
Hmm.
always bad. So let me
Right.
thank you for giving me an opportunity also to clarify. But
Yes.
the things that I'm just gonna throw in here, music. I wanted to ask you if you also recognize the logic in jazz. That is what I want to
Oh,
ask.
that's ha, that's fantastic. I have not so far with jazz. My my concentration immediately goes to the craft.
In this part of the show, we talk a little more about music and make special mention of Johann Sebastian Bach. We also talk about Thelonious Monk, the man of jazz. We look into notions of responsibility and accountability and how the trainer uses these things to nurture or foster a diverse and functional learning group. We look at living that reality, what it actually takes. We even explore the notion of, as I like to call it, the non native embodiment of a language and how to do that right. We look at improvisations and how the transformative effect of an emotional response can positively affect the learning experience. Music. I wanted to ask you if you also recognize the logic in jazz. That is what I want to
Oh,
ask.
that's ha, that's fantastic. I have not so far with jazz. My my concentration immediately goes to the craft
Mhm,
because I don't usually listen to jazz. It just happened a few times that I did. So by accident, I ended up in a concert, or I was, dragged along with some people, or maybe I knew people who did jazz music, and then I went to see them perform. I have appreciation for this art form mainly because of the craft.
mhm.
I'm just so impressed by people who can improvise on such a high level. I'm a
Mhm.
huge fan of improvisation. I know
Me
how
too.
hard it is. And I have seen, for example, jazz pianists improvise in ways that I didn't think were possible. And I have a lot of appreciation for yes, just for the craft.
Mhm,
And therefore, I don't pay attention to anything else, basically. So I've never thought about logic in jazz. I mean, only in terms of logic in improvisation in general,
mhm.
but not specific to jazz music. That's
Okay.
interesting. Why
All
did you
right.
ask about jazz music?
Because I know because I'm jazzy. Well, I
Mm.
can be jazzy, but
Mhm.
yeah. I like. I'm not a musician, but I can appreciate it. What I appreciate is what music kind of does to people, and how it makes me
Yes.
feel. I'm very aware of that, and we're talking about mysticism and spirituality and so on. I've heard things. I'm not a musician. I've heard things about music is a series of silences. It's not a sound, or or things like the blue notes, is the music that exists between the notes, and that kind of
Mhm.
talk. And
Mhm.
sometimes I wonder. I just wanted to hear what you thought about that. But thank you.
That's interesting. When I think about logic and music, then the first person that comes to my mind is Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of logic and structure in his music, and I love his music.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of that, but um, yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think of Thelonious Monk. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, as well, I'm not a great connoisseur of jazz, but I do think of the man. And you also spoke of elegance. Yes. I remember some of my developer friends speaking of elegant code. And one person comes to mind, but I'm not gonna say anything. In terms as a to go deeper in that direction, you spoke of hard work. We spoke about hard work. We spoke about the calling, and you also made the same association. The calling definitely has to do with helping people. I was listening so keenly to you and waiting for that word to come out. Yes, helping people. The calling is definitely
Yeah.
of the heart, and it is the fulfillment that you get from it. So there's also that
Hmm.
aspect that drives your career.
Very much in my teaching.
Hmm.
So I I'm not I'm not a big extrovert. I'm not the kind of person who goes to conferences and is the heart of the party. But I like to network. I like to make connections to people, to individual people, and I really enjoy creating a space for other people to connect. So
Maybe you are.
I like to organize meetings and make sure that people get to meet each other who I think will learn a lot from each other. For
Mm,
example, um, so there is something I feel this drive or urge to give people space so
mhm.
that they can grow and develop and be themselves. And mathematics is an interesting community when it comes to this because it's very diverse. So if I have a room filled with first year math students, they will be so diverse. There are so many different personalities and types, and I find this fascinating, and I want to nourish that diversity. I want each and every one of them to feel that they can be exactly as they are and they can learn exactly as they want to learn, and I will support them along the way. So somehow there is this very deep, deep drive to make this happen, and I want to be a part of this and help if I can. This is one of the biggest responsibilities I feel as a teacher. Of course, there is the material, but they can also learn a lot of the material from books. They don't always need me. I'm just one medium, just one person. But if I can create an environment where they can grow and where they can find out their best way to work and their best way to develop and to be successful wherever they want to go, then that makes me happy. It makes me
Mm,
really happy if I can be part of that journey.
yeah, yeah, very, 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 very impressive indeed. Very, very inspiring. But I'm tempted to ask you what that diversity looks like. Is it then a mixture of men and women? Also, not
Men and
physically men and
women,
women, or people
yes,
in different things. People who like heavy metal music, people who like classical music, people who like jazz,
all
perhaps.
that,
Tall people,
all
short
that.
people.
Yes, outdoorsy people,
Hmm.
indoorsy people, uh, very young people, slightly older people who already have a family,
Hmm.
and then in types. So you will have very introvert types, or people who are shy,
Hmm.
or people who are very bookish, or nerds, geeks. There are lots of words for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then other people who are really extrovert and they enjoy to party and go out with their friends. And you will have people who learn by themselves, alone. very focused. And then you will have people who always want to be in a group and they always want to talk and exchange ideas.
Mhm,
You will have people who are very conscious of how they look. They will be kind of stylish. And then
mhm,
you have the opposite, people who barely manage to get dressed properly in the morning because they really
mhm,
don't care what they look like. They
mhm.
just want to go and study and learn something. This is the whole bandwidth, and I love that.
Yes,
This is
yes.
really something I enjoy a lot about the mathematical community.
That is fantastic. You know, it's really a responsibility, and that kind of a diversity, it is one which is based on a very strong foundation. It's a foundation of logic, the foundation of life, the foundation of our explanation of everything. So, it's a very powerful thing that joins you together. And I also try to facilitate a room that carries that kind of diversity also on my show. And
Mm.
we've spoken about that before. You know, I'm not going to be activist about it. I just try to live that reality by being very inclusive with the kinds of people that I invite and the
And
kinds of
also
things I put out.
and also with the kind of questions you ask. So I enjoyed listening to previous episodes because of that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope many more people feel that way. This is flattering. Thank you very much. That's always good to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All
I
right.
mean it.
Okay, thank you again. No, you're giving me a goosebumps moment now, you know. So please do not say it anymore. All right.
I can see how I make it harder for you to find a transition.
Yes, it's hard enough for me because you know you kind of threw me. Das muss ein bisschen so aus dem Konzept geworfen. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
am gonna yeah, you know what I was trying to say was that I appreciate also inclusiveness and I really do try to facilitate that, not necessarily by having to fly the flag, but just living that reality, a reality that I imagine, and that's how it should be. That's how it should be. Yeah. I'm glad you also have the benefit of helping to maintain that kind of community. That's all I'm saying.
Mm.
You know, I really
Mm.
appreciate that. Good. Oh my
Thank you.
goodness. You are welcome. You are a lucky woman. Right. So I do have some questions for you. Now, you have kind of, well, not really killed the last one, but no, it's
Sorry.
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We're on the same wavelength. That's fantastic.
Maybe
Um,
we can come to this again from a different angle.
we can, and I suspect that we will. However, English is not your native language, is it?
No, German is my native language, but English is like second default. So often it happens to me that I don't notice which language I'm speaking. And just as in English, I sometimes look for words or I'm not quite sure whether I get the nuances right. But in German, it also happens that I search for words. So I don't really notice the difference.
Mhm.
And I feel equally comfortable in both languages.
That is good. That's good because you're also kind of and well, I don't want to put you up as a specimen, but you embody a kind of existence, a kind of dancing with the language that I want my learners to achieve at some point. And I think I can only help people to facilitate this process of getting to the stage by causing them to feel something. And if they feel
Oh,
if
oh,
yeah,
that's a very nice way of saying that.
yeah.
Yes.
That's the
So
show.
you stress the emotional component of it.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, yes, yes. As
I
well,
love that.
that's why you know I like to work with artists as well because you know the goosebumps feeling that you're giving me now because I'm interested in what you're doing. I want my people to feel that as well and feel motivated, so the language learning doesn't feel like work. That's the
Mhm.
idea.
Yes, I think it's like a magical trick if you manage to create an emotional response.
Hmm.
So I do that all the time. This is one of the reasons why I am so silly sometimes with my students. I just do something silly, I make them laugh, and then
Hmm.
I feel as if I create this little emotional point
Hmm.
in time, and then they can remember this emotional response,
Hmm.
and then they will also remember what we talked about,
Yes, yes,
hopefully.
yes. So you bring the theatrical into your teaching, training, professor practice. Yes.
Sometimes I do, yes.
You told me a story once of when you had to teach a whole group of people with no voice. How did you manage to do that?
Oh,
Tell me that story again.
oh yes. Yeah. In the moment it was a nightmare, but in hindsight it was one of the most inspiring and revealing experiences I ever had in my teaching. So let me try and remember. It was a Friday, and I had to teach a big first year course in linear algebra, something like 120 or 150 students in a big lecture theater.
Uh-huh.
But also at the same time, I had two guests, like
Mm-hmm.
visiting researchers, and we were collaborating on a project, and usually that involves talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And also, on the same day, I was supposed to have an exam written and marked.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that Friday. And I woke up in the morning and I had no voice. I don't know why. It might have been a weird kind of cold.
Mm-hmm. Had
I
you been
just remember
singing?
waking up.
Had you been singing? Sorry, sorry.
No, 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 no.
Hmm.
There was no singing or drinking
I
involved. No,
just
no.
had to ask you that. Yes, sorry.
I know. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's the first thing that comes to mind. But
Okay.
no, it was just a weird morning, and I thought, okay, I cannot really teach like this, but I didn't want to ask anyone to replace me to step in on such short notice. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, okay, let's improvise. I like improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into the lecture hall. All the students were there, and usually, it's noisy, 5 minutes before class starts. And I went to the computer and I started it so that they could see on the screen what I'm writing. And I opened a document and I just wrote, um, sorry, I have no voice today. My brain is working, but my voice is not. And then everyone was quiet and they just looked at me. And then I wrote something like, I did not want to cancel this lecture, so I have an idea. I will teach at the blackboard as I usually do. I will turn around a lot to look at you. And if you have a question, then you ask it. I mean, I can still hear, so you can ask me. And I will type the answer into this document. And then you can just keep asking, and I keep typing until you're happy. And then I go back to the blackboard. And the document with the answers will be saved, and I put it on the web so that you can also read the answers later. And I asked them, is this okay? Because if it's not, then I can just go and you have free time, and I will just find a replacement time for this lecture somehow. And the students said okay, and it was, I don't know, it was magical. They were so quiet, so focused. I have never been in a room with so many people who were so quiet.
Okay. It was a good quiet,
It
though.
was, yes, they
Okay.
looked at me. They were so focused on what I did and on my face and my gestures. And they were talking very quietly when they asked questions, and they radiated sympathy
Mm-hmm.
and respect. And then later after the lecture they came and they said, "Oh, it's so nice that you came and taught us, even though you must feel bad. I mean, you must have a cold or something. Thanks for doing this." It was really strange. And I remember walking out of there, and then later we had the exam, and I had my guest, and I kept trying to sign things in sign language. I don't speak sign language, but I tried to
Mm-hmm.
make
Mm-hmm.
signs to communicate with people. And everyone around me tried to read my mind, which was also an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but then days later, students still kept sending me emails, and
Mm-hmm.
they wrote things like, "Wow, today was really weird. Until now, I didn't notice how important your voice is for my learning." So somehow, some students had this very revealing experience that they are, I don't know, I'm sure you have a word for this, maybe audio learning type?
Auditive, I think. Auditive learners.
Auditive?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
So some of them mainly needed the blackboard and the writing, but
Mm-hmm.
some of them really needed me, my presence, my voice. And that was gone. And then they suddenly realized how important this had been before. So, yes, fascinating experience.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely fascinating. And then I remember coming back to the lecture room a few days later and I started speaking, and they all sighed with relief that
Mm-hmm.
my voice was back.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. It was a fascinating story. You really just told me a little bit of it, and I didn't want you to tell me everything because I wanted to save it for today.
Mm-hmm.
However, now that you explain in detail, there are some things that I recognize from this where, and I
Mm-hmm.
could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but what I see here is that you definitely triggered an emotional response. Okay, you had a visual aid,
Yes.
which was you were just typing in and it was coming up on the screen. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I understand. So
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
evoked an emotional response, right? You were on
What do
stage.
you think that was? What do you think the students felt in that
Yeah,
moment?
I'm gonna tell you if you let me. I've been making notes.
Okay.
The thing is,
Sorry.
you were on stage. You were on stage, and what you did, you showed human vulnerability by kind of asking
Yes.
them to bear with your weakness at your moment of weakness, right? You were a
Oh,
lived listen
yes.
to me. You were a lived example in that case because you were the living example of overcoming an adversity. They had probably not expected
Mm.
that, probably had never seen that kind of example before. So, on seeing that, right, living the example, overcoming adversity, still getting things
Yes.
done, you evoked or you
Yes.
called out a certain empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
last thing that I didn't write down, you also called out a kind of curiosity because they were like, can this really work? Okay, I'm going to see if this can work. And then they were involved to see how much it can really work.
Yes.
So
Oh,
that was it.
you're giving me goosebumps now.
That's what I think it was.
Yes.
And it's just the human, it's the human connection that you did. You were no longer, well,
Yeah.
you were probably still the professor, high and mighty. Of course, you always are. But just offering them this little window of your humanness.
Yes. And the vulnerability.
Exactly.
Yes. Very it was a very authentic moment of, okay, here I am. This is my condition. What can we do with this?
Mm-hmm.
Let's decide together. So, yes, yes, thank you. That's a very deep insight.
That's
I
how I
think
see
I
it.
begin to understand now. So the thing is, thank you. You remind me of something. Some students from this group, they told me later that this lecture changed forever how they felt about me as a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Of course, with good
So
reason.
it must, yeah, yeah. So what you said must be, there must be some deep truth in this when it comes to a teacher-student relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes,
Huh.
yes. And this for
Oh,
university kids, university young adults. Yes.
yes.
Yes, 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 of course. Of course.
Huh. Yes, maybe it was something like a bonding experience.
Yes, 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 yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. It was an invitation it was an invitation and they accepted and they felt honored by it and they didn't breach your trust, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, yes, yes, exactly. That's it. Because what you would expect from 120 people in that situation is to be noisy, to take advantage of the situation that the teacher cannot do anything, you know? That's what you might expect. And it didn't happen. So for me, it changed how, or maybe it confirmed my trust in them as a group because they behaved so respectfully
Mm-hmm.
and so empathically.
Mm-hmm.
And conversely, it changed, or maybe it confirmed something they thought of me because they saw me being completely open and vulnerable.
Human.
Very
Um,
human, yes. So I think it was a bonding experience in the sense that it strengthened existing beliefs about the other side of the
mm-hmm.
interaction.
Of course. Of
Oh,
course, of
yeah.
course, of course. I
Thank
know,
you.
yes.
I thank you for your insight.
I don't know if it's correct, but that's the first thing I came up with when you were talking. I was here like scribbling away, but that's what I think might have happened.
It
Sometimes.
rings very true to me. And some things you said really, really gave me goosebumps because I remembered again what it
Mm-hmm.
was like when I was there.
Life changing. That's what all of us want to be, transformative. This is the calling aspect of giving knowledge to people. And the
Hmm.
reason why I still do what it is I do, at the end of the day, I'm working with people and I'm trying to give them knowledge and trying to be transformative in my way,
Hmm. Hmm.
in what it is I do. I work with adults, no? I yeah, offer them
Yes, of course. Yes, I
English,
know. Yeah,
English.
this is what we share.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we share quite a few of these experiences. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. This is what I do, and it is very fulfilling. It's a feel good kind of thing, as I say. It's something that causes me to sleep a little better when I go to bed, and I see training as being one of the probably two pure things. Apart from giving knowledge, there's also art. Is pure, yes, and giving knowledge is also pure. It's almost like the kind of relationship you have when you give knowledge and your wisdom to a child. Kind of,
Yes,
kind of. It's a
kind
pure
of.
thing.
And it also, it's like a mirror. You also learn a lot about yourself
Yes, of
when you do
course,
it.
of course, of
Yeah,
course, of
at
course,
least that's how I feel.
of course,
Mm.
of course. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. All
Mm.
right. We are doing well. We are doing well. I hope the listeners enjoy this, yes, because, this is sharing a little of our lived experience here,
Hmm.
and that's what it's about. Group dynamic and body language can also have a serious effect on the learning experience. What is the significance of a more negotiated approach to adult learning? What does that say about mutual respect and what I like to call as well the learning contract? Living the language means that my first mission here is to help my people, present and past course participants, and anyone else who just likes the show. The goal is to help you to keep the language skills that you've learned, to keep you engaged with a little information and entertainment. How about you? Do you have you threatened that you might have a few questions for me? I
Yes, one came to my mind just now because we touched on communication and being vulnerable, and so I was wondering, um, how how does how does affect you? So how does group dynamics affect you in communication? So do you prefer to be in a smaller group, a larger group? How much do you pick up on, unspoken signals that happen between people in the group? How do you relate to this?
Well, how do I? Well, I use many things. As a first, having come to Germany without the language, there were at least 2 years where I had to work a lot with body language. Learning to read body language, and I think in the last show, I also mentioned that because
Hmm.
you can't really, you can't lie with body language so much. So you see what people think. Yes,
Yes.
you see what people are really thinking, and you see the contrast sometimes between not necessarily what they're actively trying to hide, but impressions that they prefer to encourage that are not necessarily the truth. Maybe themselves don't even know. Yes, so there is a kind of a burdensome. It's a burdensome thing to work with body language, but I think I learned to do that very well. It helps me a little bit, I think, in dance photography. So, but not so much. We're coming back to that. Something else I do, but so
Hmm.
I use body language. I try to establish some kind of human connection with something, whether it be art or something that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. The group dynamic. I listen. I pay attention for a little while and try to figure out who is who and what is what and try to figure out what's motivating different people for different reasons. I try to recognize the sources of power, the sources of no power, and
Hmm.
I try to kind of see myself. It's like, again, disassociation. I try to step out of myself and see myself in the group, see
Yes.
where I am in that group, try to understand also how people see me. Sometimes I work with these notions that they have. Sometimes I work to correct them. Um, but it's usually a kind of a disassociation. I try to picture myself within the group and where I fit in, get an
Mhm.
overview, spend some time doing that, and then I interact with it or try to form it in a certain
Yeah,
direction.
when you mentioned body language, I was immediately wondering how much body language changes with cultural background. Did you have to learn specific bits about, let me say, German or maybe Middle European body language that was there something that you needed to make yourself aware of?
Mhm. No, no. I think body language is it's the same. Also
Hmm.
in my culture, the body language will be colored or amplified with language. You know, maybe just little sounds or whatever. But I think the body language is the same.
Hmm.
However, the movement of the eyes or the head or how you position your feet or your hands, or we love to talk about folding the arms, which is
Oh,
actually
yes.
misunderstood. It's not always,
Hmm.
you're not always trying to block someone when you fold. Maybe you're just
I
cold.
know.
Yeah, maybe you're
Yeah,
just cold.
I know.
But
Or tired. Some
or
people
tired.
cross their
Yeah.
arms when they are tired. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, there are lots of things, but I will
Hmm.
admit, I'm a black man and you're a white woman, you're European and I am of African descent, if we want to say it that way. But
Hmm.
the blush is something I see much easier in Europe.
Of course. Yes.
So that
Yeah.
is one difference. Apart from that, um, not really. It's pretty much the same. There are also different expressions that I will see in different cultures, but I don't think the expressions themselves are different.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Yeah, so
see.
I hope
I
I
can
answered your
definitely
question.
I can definitely relate to something you said about the the spoken message and the body language message not matching up, because this is also something I'm sensitive to,
Hmm.
and the word I have for that is incongruence, and I'm not sure
Incongruence.
whether this is a good word,
Yes,
but
yes,
it's the
of
only
course.
word.
It's perfect.
So, and some people have this a lot
Hmm.
because they have an inner struggle that comes out when they communicate with other people, or maybe just with a certain
Hmm.
type of person.
Hmm.
And when I pick this up, it makes me crazy.
Mm.
Really, because I have at least with some people, I have noticed how it drives me crazy that what they say and what they try to project
Hmm.
does not at all match some other signals that I also get on some other channel.
Yeah.
And these signals come and they don't match. And
Hmm.
then it really it really confuses me, and I find it very hard to communicate with such people because I'm not really sure what signal I should respond to.
Hmm. But that brings us to, as I also said, I think there's sometimes that happens. It's not always by design.
Hmm.
Sometimes people don't know themselves that they're
Hmm.
made of two or
Yes.
three people or three personalities or whatever. So sometimes it's not all the time that it's by design. Sometimes they don't know themselves. However, this comes back to another thing that I really would like to ask you about.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, your story that you just told about, yeah, it's more than a story. It's an event. Yes, the time when you used the stage without your voice. The
Yeah.
stage, I just used the word stage. Um, do you think it was your command of the stage, the way you presented yourself there? Yeah, you wrote it on the board, but was it maybe your posture that demanded the attention, in addition to the facts, of course, that you don't have a voice, but
I'm not sure. I think it might have been a mixture of that.
hmm.
So I think it might have something to do with presence, with sort of
Hmm.
radiating authority,
Hmm.
maybe. And this has something to do with me as a person. Maybe I can just do it as Rebecca. But also in that situation, I entered the room as their teacher. So there was something in this role that gave me authority. And I think it was complemented by the students' empathy.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me the stage, they gave me the attention, they gave me focus
Mm-hmm.
and the space to improvise
Mm-hmm. And
without my voice.
and you took the stage actively.
Yes.
Mm.
So I think, oh, this has so many levels. Uh, I'm thinking about my first action. So I come in, I enter the stage, so to speak, but then the next thing I do is I create an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the students were able to decide whether to take this invitation or not. And they decided to take it.
Was this in this invitation, was there also an expectation?
I can't remember because I can't really remember my exact feelings in this moment because
That's honest. Thanks.
I felt I felt bad. I
Mm-hmm.
felt apologetic. I
Mm.
felt I am so sorry that I am standing here and this is a tough day for you because now we have a lecture and later you have your written exam and I am not there for you. I am not 100% there because I overestimated the importance of my voice being audible. As it turned out, I was able to be there for them even without my voice, but I had not experienced that before, so I couldn't know it. And therefore, I was all apologetic and I felt really bad. So, therefore, with this invitation, I think there was maybe not so much an expectation in terms of, oh, you better take this invitation. Um, I think if I had to if I had to express it on a very emotional basis, I think it would be something like, I'm very sorry. I woke up this way in the morning. I don't know why. I am healthy enough to be here and I'm offering you the best I can. And I hope that we can find a way together to make this work. And maybe together is a keyword here.
Yes, yes, yes. So I don't know. I think your aura, the authority that you brought to the room, also was a kind of communicating an expectation, which was it just happens by by accident, but by you giving them also the feeling, and by right as well, you're asking them to adjust a little bit.
Hmm.
So it was also an invitation to bear with you, and it's a
Yes,
mix
I
of
think
these
so.
things, right? Now
Hmm.
what I'm kind of
Hmm.
trying to make a segue to is the use of the stage, because this also ties into to what happens
Hmm.
with these people who are probably not aware of their own body language, what they're projecting and how it contrasts with, yeah.
Ah,
And
yes,
this non-awareness of the stage that always exists, actually they don't recognize.
yes,
That's what I'm trying to get to.
yes, yes. And I think you're right. I think you're right. And I think, of course, I can't remember exactly how I went in there and what my body language was, but apparently, when I went into this room, I was projecting a mixture of the following things. It must have been something like, I'm here, I'm entering, I'm your teacher, as always, but I don't bring everything I usually bring because my voice is gone. So, what I'm offering you is making the best of everything else that is there. So my body language was probably not, oh, I'm sick and I can't teach. It must have been something like, I'm not as I usually am, but with this different constitution, I'm still here and present and I'm willing to make this work.
Yes.
So there must have been some kind of openness also in my body language that they picked up on,
Mhm. I'm
I guess.
confident. I'm confident that we can do this together as well.
Hmm. Yes. And thank you. Because
Mm-hmm.
confidence is another keyword because it also, and here we are again with expectations. Now we
Mm-hmm.
come full circle because I think what I might also have projected is something like, I have faith in you, I have trust in you and in our teacher students
Mm-hmm.
relationship
Mm-hmm.
that we can make this work together.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I guess so, I must subconsciously have thought that they will try and make the best of the situation. And they, again,
Mm-hmm.
maybe subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
must have felt something like, oh, here she is and she is not well, but she came, so we must be important to
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think so this makes a lot of sense because one of the main positive bits of feedback that I frequently get from my students is that they feel that I care.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that I care about their learning. They matter to me. It it matters to me how they perform and how they develop. And so maybe this was one of these situations where this foundation of trust and of caring made it possible to improvise and to have this very weird silent lecture.
I like what is happening here because, as earlier, I think I reiterated that these are young adults. And this is also an approach that I take with my people. I try to, all the
Hmm.
things that all these things you communicated in your silence, and that's probably body language, or it's a mix of all these things that were communicated in your silence. Yes, this is that,
Hmm.
that's so significant. And this is speaking to an approach that I tend to take with my adult learners, because I try to frame every class. For example, on Monday I'm going to have 31 people, I think, online. And I frame what I call the learning contract. And the learning
Oh.
contract speaks to all of these things. Yes,
Hmm.
all of these things, right? This invitation to work together, this negotiated approach, um, this caring about the success that I'm confident that you can achieve or we can
Hmm.
achieve together. This inclusiveness, even
Hmm.
of telling me what works and what doesn't, and the trust to tell me
Yes.
what isn't working. And
That's a very important
that's a
bit.
that's a
Yeah.
difficult thing sometimes, because the culture sometimes is like sometimes people want me to just be frontal and just tell them what to do. And until everybody has USB in their heads, I don't really wanna I don't really want that approach, because it's also kind of a laziness. It's a laziness, it's a giving up the responsibility. So when it goes bad, then it's your fault alone as a teacher. So it's not everybody who's open to that approach. They don't want to think, they want USB.
Yes. So I a question just popped up in my head.
Uh,
At what age at what age do you think it changes from a slightly different learning contract that you might have
mhm.
to have with kids to this very adult, very grown up learning contract?
I think,
What is it? I mean, maybe it's not an age, maybe it's more a stage of internal development. What do you think is necessary for this to work?
I think it's once you start recognizing that, for example, you might find yourself in a circumstance which is not your fault, but it's your responsibility to do something about it. And that's just an example of a
Hmm.
stage where you start to try to you can accept that as a fact, and you try to shape who you are and try to shape your world. And once you start thinking like that, then I think that is how you have to educate, and that's the only way you can facilitate a room in which learning will happen.
Hmm. Yes.
That's what I think as a trainer of adults. Yes, yeah,
Mm.
that's what
Hmm.
that's what I think. Yeah. But it's sad. I saw that a little rough there. But there's some people just also don't want it. And I see it as a kind of laziness. Yeah, don't
Yes.
they don't.
It's also escaping responsibility.
Yes, yes, yes. Of course,
Sometimes it's just easier to blame the teacher
of
and
course.
not to, yeah.
Think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we've had such a wonderful talk today. Yes, but I still love all my students, don't get me
Yes.
wrong.
Oh,
I can also be the
as
one with the pie cho if they need it. You laugh, I can.
yeah,
Mhm.
I can see it. And sometimes it's the very sort of nice, friendly people who can be very strict when it
Mhm.
matters.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm the same. I'm much more strict than many of the students expect when they first experience me as a teacher because I'm usually friendly and smiling,
Mhm.
and then they come to my exam and then they think, oh,
Mhm.
okay, gosh, she's friendly, but she's also very strict.
Yeah, well, people who know how to be very nice also know the opposites. But
Yes,
I think, just generally speaking,
sometimes
not that they do
I
it.
think I think my standards are very high, and
Hmm.
I feel that being empathic and friendly and supportive is a better way of reaching these very high standards.
It's an active decision that you make, and yeah, me too. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, just keep it fresh and positive here. I sometimes,
Yeah.
that's the thing with me, I speak to the darkness and the light with the same interest. Sometimes.
And we need both. We
Yeah.
need both. And
Mm,
okay, now I'm going to share something that also speaks to the darkness. I think one of the reasons why students who struggle feel comfortable talking to me about their problems is because they see in me that I know about struggle.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I know about failure, I know about struggle, I know about not knowing where you belong, not being sure where you want to go. Um, and I think this is why sometimes they decide to talk to me. So, for example, if they fail an exam and they want to talk about this, but it opens up a space to talk about other things, other struggles, other problems, and then they decide to use this space and to open up and talk about this stuff, they do this because I guess they do this because they feel in me that I am open to listen to them.
mm-hmm. We keep coming back to the humanness of
Yes.
this kind of activity, and you're definitely right, because sometimes when I tell people that I know the pain that language can bring, and I do have
Hmm.
some serious pain, I'm not gonna go into that right now. I'll tell you probably off the air, but I know what the struggle, what it can be. And there are people who will say, well, it's not just the language, but there's lots of difficulties I have gone through.
Hmm.
And not everything is perfect, yes, but there are people who will say, well, we understand, and that works well. And then there are other people who will also say, well, I mean, if it happened to you, then you deserve it, because they're convinced that you live in the same world, and
Ah.
so we
Mm.
don't necessarily live in the same world, as far as everything is concerned.
Oh,
So
no, definitely
it's
not.
also
Hmm.
it's also recognizing these things sometimes. The group dynamic sometimes shows you,
Yes.
um, if you can step out of the group and see the group, and see yourself in the group. Sometimes you see these kinds of Einstellungen, attitudes,
Hmm.
and you then
Yes.
decide from a distance, okay, how am I gonna approach this? Yes, how am I gonna work with it? Am I going to dance to this tune, or am I going to correct it? How important is it to me or will
Hmm.
this person run into a wall? Should I just let
Yeah.
them run into a wall? Do I need to take it on? Do I have the energy? Is it worth it?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Things like
That's a
that.
very good one. Do I
Yeah.
let this person run into the wall
Yeah.
because I think it's an important learning experience?
Yeah.
Or do I feel that it's too soon and I should
Yeah.
put a pillow in front of the wall and
Yeah. Also,
make the crush a bit milder and until the person is better prepared? I mean, there
yeah.
are some walls you just have to run against,
Well,
right?
of course, of course, of course, of course, of course. But I mean, it comes back to the self in every relationship. We said it earlier, in relationships, we learn more about the self than anything else. Um, it is,
Yes,
yeah.
and also in failure. I'm a strong believer in learning by failing. So in class, when the students talk to me and someone says something that is wrong or maybe off topic, or I don't know, sometimes a student makes a really big mistake live in class.
Hmm.
So there will be a big flaw in the answer, in the argument. And when this happens, then I actually thank them for sharing this with us, because I hope that the same mistake will not happen again. So everyone learned something from this. This is one of the two main principles. I thank them for mistakes, and there are no stupid questions. Actually, I believe in this so strongly.
I think I'll
I
make
mean,
a note of
there
that.
are stupid questions, but in the learning experience, I believe that every question is a step forward. And therefore, I actually make my first year students say this together with me aloud. I make them repeat after me. There are no stupid questions. And we do this a lot. And I mean, I have not that much evidence yet. I have to teach for another 20 years and collect more evidence. But I think that it's little things like that that create space in the classroom for people to open up and to share if they are not sure they understood, and to share their questions and not to be scared that they might look stupid, because apparently this is one of the main fears of students, to look stupid in front of the others.
Yeah, but it's a cultural thing as well, because I mean, I get the feeling, and I'm
Yes.
gonna just say this straight. I think
Hmm.
there's a tendency here to just, and this is something I experience in Germany more
Hmm.
strongly actually than in other cultures. I mean, so this is Abstempeln effect that
Yeah,
happens really
yeah, yeah.
quickly
Hmm.
here. People,
Yes,
yes, yes,
I
yes.
know what you mean.
It's and
Hmm.
and and to shape a culture. Sometimes I have a group of people for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I have to shape a culture of this kind of openness and this kind of trust in 2 weeks. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it
Yeah,
just doesn't work. So, luckily for
yes.
you, you have your groups for longer. I hope it's not just block seminars that you deliver.
No, no, it's usually longer, and this
Good
is lucky because then I have a chance to
to sh-
create this
to
atmosphere.
nurture that
Otherwise, it's
culture.
hard
Yeah.
because one or two students who go against this and who laugh at people when
Mm-hmm.
they make a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
they immediately destroy my efforts,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then I
Yes.
have to work harder.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, putting people in boxes is, as a teacher, that's a difficult thing.
It's
And I remember a few students throughout the years that I had that kept reminding me that I should never put a student into a box, because I was lucky to meet a few students who, well, one day they would ask really weird questions as if they had never listened to anything I ever said.
mm-hmm.
And then the next day they would ask a brilliant question, or they would give a brilliant answer to a question that I
Mm-hmm.
asked. And so it was like two different people. And I thought, what's going on? So yeah, they would be impossible to put into a box.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I don't know, just the idea of being okay with, well, you said here, I wrote this down. Thanks for the mistake, and it might sound very esoterical and so on, but it is very good. It's also very fashionable these days. But to accept failure and make sense. I've written it down because these are your words. I've used the approach before. It makes perfect sense in saying, well, listen, you made this mistake. There are probably five other people who didn't say
Yes,
anything but made the
but
same
they would
mistake.
have made, thank you,
Yeah,
exactly, that's exactly
they
it.
didn't say
Yes.
anything.
And
So,
also, and also, a mistake that a student makes can make me aware of something that I should have explained better or in a
yes,
different way.
yes, yes,
So
of
it
course, of
has
course, of
happened to
course.
me that I asked a question and then a student gave an answer that was slightly off. And then when I kept asking, at some point it revealed a little logical mistake that happened before. And then I was able to clarify that. And without this mistake, we would never have noticed
Hmm.
this underlying problem.
Yes, yes, yes. Hmm.
So, this is why I'm a huge fan of making mistakes in public. And I also make mistakes in public. And when it happens in class, then I make sure to involve the students in my thinking process.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Thank you for that as well, because this confirmation coming from you is good. It's good for me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes me happy to think that we have the same approach independently from another.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's just the adult thing. I wanted to ask you though, have you ever worked with like adolescents, as in like people at Abitur level?
Not for an extended period of time. I sometimes have school classes visiting, or sometimes I visit schools, and
Mm-hmm.
I will have an hour to tell them things about maths and
Mm-hmm.
research, and maybe I tell them about possible jobs that you
Mm-hmm.
can do with mathematics, and I just try to raise their curiosity and interest. But then it would not be an extended amount of time, and therefore I don't feel qualified
Mm-hmm.
to say a lot about teaching people that age.
Okay.
I don't know how much it differs.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like 16, 17, 18, how much does that differ from 2021?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. What do you think?
Slightly. Well, yes, it's definitely a transition into that stage where they start making meaning of life and feeling their own sense of influence of their own world, and then this moving up to the approach of the learning contract as we just spoke about. But it's a
Yes.
transition stage. But I'm just curious to know, we can talk about that another time because there's something else that crossed my mind having to do with your podcasting. But we're gonna come back to that
Ah, yeah.
because at this point I want to ask you this before it slips me. I am
Hmm.
speaking now. I'm speaking to your faculties. I have the opportunity of conversing with your intellect. The other day, we spoke about very briefly. I described the vision of you actually, and this is not in a kind of light flattery. I know who you are. So when I see you dancing, it's like intellect in movement, and that's a very Zacklish
It's a
compliment.
beautiful phrase.
Yes, but
Yeah,
but
it's a
of course,
beautiful
because I
phrase.
know who you are and I see what you're doing. It's fantastic. Now, I'm speaking to your intelligence. I'm speaking to your interest. I'm speaking to the things that have driven and motivated you over the years. I'm speaking to the calling that drives what it is you do and the talent and the hard work and so on. But I also know that you're a dancer because that is how I met you. I met you as a stage person. I remember the
Yes.
minutes, yes, that I met
You
you. Of
do.
course I
Oh,
do. I
that's a
was
big compliment.
sitting in the lobby with Saeed Elamia and we were drinking whiskey straight. And you came down the stairs and Saeed said, "Oh," and introduced you. And there was this moment, I still have the vision of you coming down the stairs and you smiled, you seemed nice. I was, of course, distracted by my whiskey straight. Yes. And it was just one of those moments that I won't forget. I mean, Saeed is still, I mean, he was also on the show. He was one of the first who had
Yes.
faith in it. I want to have him on again because what he was saying there at the time, I was a young podcaster and I can do this better now. So I'd love to. I will invite him again. But I remember that
Oh, yes.
moment.
He has so many interesting things to
Yes, yes,
share.
yes, of
It's
course.
definitely worth having him again.
Of
Yeah.
course, but what I'm coming to with all of this, I'm setting the stage for this one question. This one question is, how does the wisdom of the art of dance, you think, inform your training practice, your whole approach to mathematics and people work?
Um,
Does it affect it at all?
it does. It does affect it a lot, and I think the best way I can put it is by repeating something that Martha Graham said or wrote. At least I can say something along the lines. It's like if you don't express it, then maybe no one will. So I think she said or wrote this in the context of the question of, am I a good artist? Is what I'm doing good enough? Is it important enough? Is it relevant enough? And then my interpretation of the answer is that sometimes the question is not, is it good enough? The question is there something coming from within me that wants to be shared? And if I don't share it, then maybe no one will share this. Maybe it won't go out into the world at all.
Hmm.
And so, if I now try and translate this into my work as a researcher and a teacher, in recent years, I found myself when it comes to a decision. So, for example, should I should I do podcasts on topics that are not mathematical? Should I write about topics that are not mathematical? Should I offer teaching, maybe workshops to students on topics that are not mathematical, but maybe they are about stress, anxiety, time management, motivation? Should I do this very unusual project, although it's not at my core expertise? Should I spend time coaching people, although it's not my main expertise? The answer to all these questions was always yes. And I think it's because of this Martha Graham thing. I think in that moment I felt that I can give something to the students, to my colleagues, or I don't know. I was able to share something and I felt that there was a need for this. And then I thought, okay, if I don't do it, then maybe no one will. And so I just go ahead and do it.
If you don't express it, someone else will. So is this?
No, I think it's maybe someone else won't. I think it's maybe someone else won't.
Oh,
Maybe no one will.
maybe no one
Yes.
will.
So if I get the feeling that there are students who need support with anxiety before exams, just
Mm-hmm.
to give one example,
Mm-hmm.
of course I could say, oh, they could go to the student counseling service. They can read self-help books. Of course they could do that. But if I feel that there is something I can contribute that might help them, and if I feel that maybe if I don't do this, no one else will make this
Mm-hmm.
will have this workshop or will have this conversation with them,
Mm-hmm.
then my decision is okay, I will do it because I think I can. So there is something in me that reaches out to these people, and also I feel the need, and then I decide to do this although it's not in my job description, so to speak. So I have to do research and I have to teach. No one tells me to do mentoring or coaching. No one tells me to do networking. No one tells me to do workshops for my students so they have less anxiety before exams.
Mm-hmm.
But I do these things because I have ideas how I could do them and because I feel a gap. I feel that there is a need for this.
Embracing failure and not being afraid to talk about it is almost fashionable these days. Still, how does the art of dance influence the training practice of Rebecca as a mathematics professor? Rebecca began using media to enrich her whole training experience since long before the crisis. I've also been doing the same. In this last part of the interview, we look at exactly that. We look at my podcasting practice as well as hers. And again, we talk a little bit more about how art influences all of it. I hope you enjoy. All right, so I am now trying because it was the wisdom of dance. How does that affect your practice as a trainer? And you spoke of this quotation: "If you don't do it, maybe nobody else will." So it is this courage then to also I'm seeing here improvisation or choreography, practice choreography,
Mhm.
and the spirit of improvisation is the same kind of spirit that will encourage you to try something even though you can't present at that point in time as a professional, but just as
Yes.
an expression.
That's a very interesting aspect as well, because I think my approach to improvised dancing totally
Mm-hmm.
carries over to improvised teaching. I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
about this before, but I think you're perfectly right. So if I'm comfortable in my technique and in my expression, then I can just go and improvise away. And I have actually improvised on stage live, and I enjoy it tremendously. um, Even improvised dancing to improvised music. This is it's such a thrill. It's such a flow you get into. It's wonderful. And I do the same in teaching sometimes. So if I know the material really well and if I feel really comfortable with answering all the questions, then I might sometimes just go in there and improvise. And I can do this because I'm not afraid of making mistakes. And I think it's the same on stage. If I improvise in dance, I just have to be very confident that whatever comes out in that moment is just there, it's just authentic, it's in that moment, it can never be the same again, it's unretrievable in a way, and therefore, whatever mistakes I make, whatever a mistake means in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
it's just part of the story.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Thank you. That's also what I want to hear. Yes, and it seems it seems as if you thought about it. You've
Yes,
given it some thought.
I did, but interestingly, I never did make
Not
this
before. Well,
transition before when it comes to my teaching. This only happened just now, live. So I'm very, very happy about your question. Thank you.
I try. And yes, I mean, I did think about this interview, and I was confident that you would be honest and authentic in the way you answer, thoughtful, and I appreciate your honesty. Thank you very much. All right. Okay. Now, Rebecca, listen, the last thing I want to ask you, I want you to tell me about your podcasting. What is happening with that? You said you do, well, you are using media. You are no stranger to using, let's say, well, we can call it new media, new ways of instruction.
Mm.
I like to talk about what I call this democratization of the learning experience, whereas everybody has the world in their pockets. We call it an iPhone or we call it an Android, and we can use these things for different things, especially now with the crisis, quote unquote. I am forced to be much more active online. I make no apologies for putting myself out there, using video, using photography, using podcasting,
Mm.
using playlists, and enriching the learning experience. And I'm aware of the fact that you also use podcasting on,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and I
What
also
is
consider it an enrichment, really. So
Mm-hmm.
it started quite a few years ago when I had a big first year course, again, linear algebra,
Mm-hmm.
and some students asked me whether it would be possible to record what I just to record my voice during the lecture, because some had sort of conflicts in their calendar, in their schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one student in particular who said, "Oh, I can only come to one lecture each week, not to two lectures, and I miss so much, and I can copy notes, but then I don't know what you said, and I don't know your explanations. Is it okay if I just put my mobile phone at the front? I give my mobile phone to someone, and they record the lecture for me, and then I have it." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And then other students said, "Oh, but we want to have the recordings as well. Can we not maybe have a recording for everyone?" And then it so happened that all the students together collected money, just a tiny bit of money from every student, and then all together they bought a recording device for me.
What? You are so. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it must have been the idea of just a few of them, but then they collected just maybe 50 cents from everyone, I don't know. Um, to It was a huge class, so they didn't need much from every student, and then they bought a very simple but easy to handle recording device, so that in the next year, with the upcoming lecture then for basically the same group of students, they knew that I would have a device so I could produce audios of my lectures. And so I did. And from that day on, basically, I have always produced audio files of my lectures. And then sometimes it happened that I got questions and I said, "Oh, okay, I'm giving you a short answer now. And if you want to know more, then just talk to me after the lecture." And then they asked me whether I could produce an audio file of the extended answer. And so I started to do things that I called audio specials. So it would be short audio files, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, where I would go into more detail about something that occurred in the lecture. And then out of this, somehow the podcast developed. And one of the main sources of podcast topics is something that circulates among the students during the lecture. For example, it could be a little box or something else. And if they want to ask anonymous questions, then they can write them on a piece of paper, and I collect them at the end of the lecture. And then I have a bunch of questions. And then I sit down and I do podcast episodes that answer the questions. So basically, this is what happens. So I have the audio recordings of my lectures, I have the podcast episodes with additional material. I sometimes answer questions that I get by email in a podcast episode because I feel that this is a very good, very insightful question. I want to share the answer with everyone. And over time it just got more and more. So now I have videos as well. I sometimes have podcast episodes on non-mathematical topics,
That
uh,
was a question.
lots of
The
things.
next one. That is fantastic. I'm a little bit envious of that because, I mean, what you're saying to me is that your fans bought Technic for you. Yeah.
Well,
But,
yeah,
I just want to say, hold on. I want to say my
it's
favorite camera
incredible,
is a
right?
Pentax 645. My favorite camera is Pentax 645Z. It's middle format. I need it. I can do the best art. So if anybody out there is listening who wants to send me a Pentax 645Z middle format, I want it.
I have I
So
have
great.
another story along the same lines. A while ago, I was booked into a lecture theater that was too small, and so the students came up with possible solutions. And one of the solutions was for the students to set up a video camera and to video record every single lecture. And then they took my audio file and then they engineered a proper lecture video. And they did this in their spare time to share with all the other students because some of them couldn't go into the lecture hall because there were no more seats. So, what I find incredible about this is the sense of community and of solidarity of the students for each other. I think it's completely amazing how they step up for one another and how they try and find solutions so that everyone can have the best possible material for learning.
This is great. I find it fantastic because they're telling you exactly what they want. And yeah, also, I'm totally wowed by this, And the next thing I definitely have to ask, I have to experience these podcasts as well. Do you deliver in English or in German or both?
In German,
In
because
German?
yeah, it's my main teaching language.
Well, of course. No, 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 it's fine. It's fine. I can appreciate that. I can
I
appreciate
can
that.
I
As a matter
can
of
do
fact,
extra special episodes in English, maybe.
you would do an extra special episode in English
I
just for
would.
me.
I would. If you, of course, if you say, "Oh,
Hmm.
please, could you do a 10-minute podcast on this?" then I will
Hmm.
do an episode in English and it will be dedicated to you, of course. Of course, I would do that. Um, the
I'll
students
think
use
about
it.
that.
The students use it in many different ways. Actually, sometimes I get messages and they will say, "Oh, in the next episode, could you please say hi to my sister Julia?" for example. So they make jokes. One of the students actually told me that they listen to it in the car when they drive. So, yeah, apparently there are lots of ways um, to use it.
All right, fine. I will get back to you on that. Thank you very much for the offer.
Please
I
do.
will take you up on that. Yes, of course, of course, of course. Now, this is something that you do for your university students, and it's a project. It's a living project. It's something
Yes.
real. It's not just about you. It's something driven by a calling. I'm sure. No, it's something you
Yes,
enjoy as well.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I try to address different needs. So some of the episodes will be short, sometimes it will be a series and they each have 5 minutes. Sometimes they are
Mm-hmm.
long and elaborate and basically they
Mm-hmm.
can fall asleep listening to me if they like. Um,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so it depends on what they want. It depends on the topics. And I get it's very low tech, but I think I get better at finding topics that are suitable for a podcast, whereas some topics are not. And then sometimes I decide to do a little video instead or to write a longer email. Sometimes I do that as well. It's fun. It's definitely fun and it adds to the mixture. So, relating to what you said before, the current situation has forced us to go online and do many things, but I think it has enriched the experience because now we have this huge variety of learning materials and it
Mm-hmm.
means that the students can experiment much more with the variety and they can find out how they can learn best. So some of the students told me they like the videos and some say no, I don't like the videos, I prefer the podcast. And some
Mm-hmm.
say, oh no, I don't need your explanations. Actually, I just need some notes, and the notes are fine
Mm-hmm.
and they are detailed enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's good. Also, I would like to. Also, can I have access to this
Hmm.
podcast? Can
Yeah.
anybody access them?
Yes, most
All
of
right.
it is just accessible without any barriers, without any passwords.
Mm-hmm.
You just need my university webpage. So there's lots of stuff, and I can describe what might be interesting for people who don't want to read my research papers because I think my research papers are not so interesting for many people. So at the left, there are these things, they're called, so this is in German now, but there's also an English version of the page. So there's Lebenslauf if people want to know something about how I got there, like a CV. There's research if people are interested in my research topics. And then there is Lehre. And I think Lehre is maybe where the resources might be most interesting, because there you can find my blog and you can find audio recordings of previous lectures. And then there is this podcast. And the podcast started with the name Noch Fragen, which means something like, are there any questions left? So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's meant to open up space for questions.
Yes, fantastic. I will definitely share this. It's a long link, but I'm still gonna say it. The link is https www.mathematic with K at the end dot uni minus halle dot de Waldecker slash index dot html.
Yeah, that's my main homepage, and from there you can find stuff. So I also write in a blog, so sometimes people comment on that, and the podcast really now is for everything. So it started with just things that were closely related to the lecturing that I was doing, but now it has become something much more open, and I will pick up everything that people ask me about. So, for example, recently people had exams coming up, and then there were questions that were related to the exam. And then I just did podcast episodes that related to that. Something that I'm thinking about now, but that's going to be a bit more work. I would like to organize the archive in a better way, because I would like students, in particular students, to be able to find the material more easily. Right now, it's still a bit erratic, and sometimes it's organized by year or by course, but maybe there is a way to organize it better so that people can also search for topics, for example.
For topics, definitely. For topics, because I suspect that there are also some hobby mathematicians out there. My listenership is mostly from Germany, so I wouldn't be surprised if, also based on the wonderful things we spoke about, that people might be interested in checking this out.
Yeah, maybe.
Um, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'll definitely share it in as a reading this long link was a little bit clumsy for me, but it will definitely be in the show notes. So
Hmm.
thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for
You're
sharing.
welcome. Yes. I hope that people find something interesting.
Of course. Of course. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. All right. Well, we have had such a wonderful talk today. I just want to take this opportunity, Rebecca, to thank you for being on the show. I think you were honest and open and authentic and interesting and inspiring and all these wonderful things. And
Thank you
you
so
shared a
much.
link. Yes, you shared a link, and it's a living link because it has captured probably the essence of your soul. I don't know. We've spoken for so long, and if people listen to the show and they want more, they can ask us for more in terms of me personally, or they can just go to your show. And it was just so great. I'm gonna share this, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for taking so much time. I had a great time. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Of course, of course. I am honored. I am honored, and I look forward to posting this episode. Yeah, I will definitely keep you in the loop where that is concerned.
Thank you.
Coincidentally, I'm going to a show this evening. I have a
Oh,
dance show coming up
cool. Where
at
are you going?
it's in Hermannplatz, which is an hour from here, which means that I have to cook something. I have an hour to get ready
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and then
Ah,
an hour to
interesting.
leave.
Cooking is the next thing on my list as well.
Yeah, you're gonna
Yeah.
cook. Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I'm gonna warm something up. I'm actually gonna do my favorite, which is like something frozen. Well, it's not my favorite, but it's my favorite frozen thing that I'm gonna do quickly for dinner today, and then head off to the
Yeah.
to the show. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I hope you enjoy it.
Yes, I am sure it will be fine. Thank you. I'll try my best. I'll tell you about it.
Yes. Oh, and I look forward to the next time we meet in the sort of dancing surroundings. So something I should have said earlier when you mentioned how we met in the dance
Mhm.
world was that
Yes.
some of the nicest shots still that I have from live performances are from you, actually.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Yeah,
you know,
there are a
I do
few very
try.
special ones, and they are from you. I'm very, very
I do
grateful.
try. I do try. And the last performance that I had the privilege of photographing, where you performed so well, I can warn you that these shots are probably even nicer.
Oh, I can't
Mhm.
wait.
So
Oh,
be warned. Be warned. Be warned. Be
thank you.
warned. Be warned. Yes, yes, yes. They were put together with better eyes, better technique, better understanding, better appreciation of who you are as a person and also of dance, the art itself. So be
Hmm.
warned to be wowed.
Ooh.
I
Ah,
hope, I hope,
now
I
I
hope.
can't wait. Oh,
And
you
it
mean
was
Roxanne's last show? Yes.
see, yes, 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 Roxanne, and it was also some kind of it was an anniversary of hers.
Yes,
Yes.
it was her birthday a little while ago, and also it was a stage anniversary. I think 35 years on stage. It's really hard to believe that it's that long, but yes. And for that occasion, she wanted to have something really special.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I feel honored that she invited me to do it. It was a little bit challenging, but as I said to you, and I can threaten this again, these photos really will be, they will be better. Well, not well, you know, I'm not gonna say better, but they will be equally as engaging as the ones we did before.
Yes, I think it will be very special in another sense as well, because when we were working towards this show, it was under the corona restrictions. And so in some
Ah,
sense,
yes.
this is very, very contemporary art. And
Yes,
I
yes, yes, it
guess
is.
you must have felt the difference as well as the eye from outside.
It was definitely meaningful. And you know, the funny thing about me as a photographer, you know, a dance photographer, is that sometimes somebody said it to me the other day, you know, they just said it by the way. They said, du hast auch deine eigene Ansprüche. No? And I'm
Yes.
like, well, yeah, you know, and I didn't think of it before that I sometimes place myself under certain restrictions, whereas I have my own quality criteria
hmm
and my own sense of perfection, and that is good for the art that comes out. Again, of course, there's always a question, you know, whose art is it, whose canvas is it?
Yes.
However, all I'm trying to say is that I recognize that it was a special show. Yes,
hmm
I've worked with Roxanne before. We've even
hmm
done an exhibition together. Secrets Leela is something that also means a lot to me because as a photographer, I was invited into a space that was kind of special. I got a chance to see,
Yes.
you know,
It
certain
was quite
trances.
intimate. Yes.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. So I feel very honored by that, and I'm gonna do my best. You know, it's good also to know what it meant to Roxanne. Yeah, and it also
Hmm.
touches even on some of the things that we spoke about. Yes,
That's
this
true. It
trance
does.
state and this spiritual, and yeah, it seems also as if it gives you also a chance to express that spiritual that you
Yes.
spoke of earlier.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. Dancing has created some very intense spiritual moments. And also, now that we talk about this, I realized that some of my dance trainers or coaches have also influenced not just my dancing, but also my teaching personality as a mathematics teacher. So there are some more links between the
hmm
two
hmm
worlds. Yes.
Good, good, good. We tried to touch on that, but you know, maybe the reminder was a nicer impulse. But you know,
hmm
now that we've spoken about it, I think I will be happy. Maybe I can even post one of these photos so the listeners know what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah, I'd be
Yes,
happy to
maybe.
do
Let's
that.
discuss this.
Of course, I'll
Yeah.
definitely have to talk to Roxanne about that first, but
hmm
I'm sure it would be nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for taking so much time. Thank
You are
you. I
welcome. It
enjoyed
was
the
a pleasure.
conversation so much.
Yes, yes. All right. So until next time, and thanks again.
Yes. Talk to
Have a
you
nice
soon.
evening. All right then. Bye bye.
Bye.
With a small win is always a good way to begin. Check out the show notes for this episode at www.trainingtree.de/podcast or englishcoachpodcast.com. Like it if you like it, and if you don't, lie to me. Just kidding. But still, feel free to share it with a friend. Post a rating or give meaning to the things you think about the show by using the feedback form to tell me personally what you think. You can even use the voicemail function that is visible on any feedback page. This will help it to help you as it's intended to do. Subscribe only if you feel like, so you know when there's a new episode available. Thanks for listening. Looking forward to hearing from you, and bye for now.